Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Fetch Quest podcast. We're talking about video games and more. I'm here for barista for tonight, Brewer, joined by my coworker, Connor.
Hello.
Today, we're going to talk about a simple game that grabbed our hearts in a really special way.
And while we talk about it, we recommend you grab a nice cup of coffee or just a relaxing drink in general, maybe a cup of tea if you're British.
That's because we're talking about the charming little experience that is Coffee Talk. And Coffee Talk is, to give a little synopsis of it, it was just a nice little short visual novel. It released in 2020, and it's about as simple as its title. You run a coffee shop, and you talk to people, and that's kind of the whole experience, but it really is beautiful.
Yeah, it's a very relaxing sort of chill game that, it's also pretty short. You can finish it very quickly. Um but it's just a really nice and relaxing game to, chill out with, relax after a long day, and just vibe with some really fun and cool characters.
Yeah, and what makes this game stand out with its writing, at least, is it is kind of set in a very realistic setting, but they do sprinkle in a little touch of fantasy in the real world. So you'll have a couple of other races like orcs, elves, Atlanteans, succubus. There's a lot of different races in the game that are represented through fantasy means, and they aren't just there to look cool or to look a certain way. They're also tied into just general world building of the game, especially for a lot of the talks about racism, and then also even immigration issues as well for the characters. But when you're learning all their stories, though, it's simple. They come in, they take a seat, you serve them a cup of coffee, and depending on what you serve them, sometimes you may get some different answers about their life, and that's how you're going to get everything told to you.
Yeah, and that is, in my opinion, probably one of the strongest parts of this game is it, even though this is a fantasy setting where you've got vampires, werewolves, and all these other typically fantasy associated creatures, it still does such a great job of making them feel like real people, and that have their own issues and their own problems with the world and stuff like that. And they come to this coffee spot not only to get a nice cup of coffee, but also to vent and talk about those issues. And I think it really nails that vibe. And I really love how the writing of this game sort of I guess sort of is able to mix this level of fantasy with the real topics and issues that it explores that can be obviously tied to our real world too.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's my favorite thing is just a lot of the characters, because I got very invested in their stories. A lot of them, almost all of them, are very charming. I don't think there's a single character I really hated, but all of them have a very nice story to tell. The one that you'll see the most in the game is Freya. She's a writer who is also kind of broke because she's a writer trying to make it by and eventually make it big with her stories. So you help her a lot, serving her coffee to help when she's trying to do a late night draft, or even sometimes maybe serving her a nice little relaxing drink so she could actually get some rest when she's stressed from all the writing. But then you have other characters as well. Another favorite of mine was Aqua. She seems like a pretty straightforward character at first, especially just quirky little nervous college girl. She wants to make some indie games and stuff, but also there's another side to her story as well, for I said, that commentary on the real world and also world building, to where she's separated from her family right now, kind of living on her own. And as much as she wants to see her family in person, she was lucky enough to get a visa to come into the country, whereas the rest of her Atlantean family was not, especially because there's a lot of hate towards them in coming to the country. So she was very lucky to have that. but it's made it to where she's trying to having to figure things out without much of that support group until she can eventually find one later in the game.
Yeah, and I will say, Freya is probably the character I like the most because it is also the character I can relate to the most. So
The writer likes the writer.
uh, yeah, but I mean, also helps that she's probably like the second most important character in the game, besides obviously the protagonist. Um,
Yeah, no, definitely. I will
and
say the protagonist. There are some elements that are at least interesting about them, but they do mostly just try to have their personality show through like the conversations they have with the employees, but they never really
yeah,
get too much into their backstory like at all. Even if some other characters poke and prod a little bit.
yeah, and I think it's I'd say like a really like good balance because like there's enough for you to sort of like project yourself onto the protagonist while also them very clearly having their own personality and opinions on a lot of the topics that the game discusses and stuff like that. But if we're going to be going off of characters and talking about characters, I also really like Hyde, the
That's a
vampire
good one.
character of the game. Yeah, so kind of Hyde's like a very unique character, I'd say, in the game because Hyde is um, not only like a well,
Bottle
obviously as they're a
vampire.
vampire, so well, I was gonna say they're a vampire for the most part, which they do work like real vampires in the fact that like they live a really long time and are also since they really young looking because while I'd say Hyde looks around maybe like older 20s in appearance,
Yeah,
he's
early 30s.
actually yeah, he's actually like over 80 years old at least.
I think he's
And
actually a couple
so
hundred years old. They never give an exact age, but he has some hints towards like him being really back there. You know.
yeah, exactly. And so he obviously has a lot of opinions. He's got a lot of experience in this world and stuff like that. And so he's a very interesting character to involve in these discussions. And especially because of like he's very much an asshole about it, which I think is
He is an
he,
asshole.
he's an asshole, and I think it's funny. He's a likable asshole. I'll say that much. And I think that's probably my favorite part about Hyde is that in a lot of games like these, I think it's very easy to just make every single character like super likable and not have like any big issues. And there are characters that do have issues and stuff like that and flaws, but I think having a character like Hyde who's just can be unapologetically like assholey to the other characters, it's just such a nice like it's such a nice like refresher because and the thing is that Hyde's not really an asshole to be an asshole.
He just tries to get
The
to the point quickly in a manner that he sees fit in a lot of
Well,
ways.
there's two big reasons. It's that of he doesn't like skirting around. He just likes to be right to the point of what he wants to say, and also like the more time you spend with Hyde, the more you realize that with him being a vampire and stuff like that, and him being an ex model and stuff like that, because that's a big part is that he used to be like a fashion model and
Well,
stuff
actually,
like
no. I
that.
think during the
Is
period of the game, he used to do a couple different professions, but he is a model during at least the first game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I forgot about that. But he's done a lot. But his big thing is that he's just like insanely bored. He has, and that's why his main relationship to Gala, who we'll talk about in a bit, is so important. Is because Hyatt is just like insanely bored with everything, and that's why he's kind of an asshole because in his mind if he can make someone, at least how I read it, is that if he can make, like someone a little mad and stuff like that, even if he means well, it's still at least entertaining to him.
Yeah,
It's kind of like rage baiting. It's the idea behind rage baiting. And
I bet you're familiar with
trust
that.
me, I am very familiar with rage baiting. So
Yeah, no, I'd say in
I
Hyde's case as well, like, again, part of it is just from age, because he does have some smaller bits of dialogue that shows just, like, how he views the world, especially, like, his work and stuff, because he swaps around different jobs when his employers quite literally die of old age. Because one of them, he mentioned how it was like, oh, yeah, I'll usually only stay with the company till the grandkid's dead, because, like, it's like, yeah, he worked with the grandpa when he was younger, worked with their kid, and then worked with their kids right afterwards. So like it's just kind of interesting in that sense. Just seeing
Yeah,
seeing all these like
exactly.
fancy races as well interact in that way and talk about their experiences, because like there's a major couple in the game as well that I feel like does have some real world parallels, because like part of the issue with their relationship has to come down to their family values, some a lot of which they disagree with, and a lot of are old and outdated, but they still have to deal with because they're family. On one side of the family, they hate the race of the other person they're dating, and the pride of that family would never allow it. And the other side has some similar values, but also has been burnt by the other side. But on one side, the other guy wants to really leave his family because of that. On the other one, they were raised to always stick with family no matter what. So even if maybe from one lens it looks like one of them is completely right and like, yeah, just leave. On another side, you kind of see the perspective of, it is still wrong, but it is very hard to leave the people who raised you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that is one of my like that's one of my probably like favorite like little arcs of the game, because I think I know a couple you're talking about. And it's just such a nice like little story
Yeah.
to
Well, I just like
fill
how
out.
real it can feel, because
Yeah.
that is something that you can face a lot of times. Maybe not in that exact context, but in similar situations. Just because family is a very complicated matter, especially when you're trying to branch off on your own and maybe have your own family or have your own relationships. If they don't approve, it makes it to where you're always very split between the person you love in front of you and the people that raised you, because even if maybe they aren't always right and sometimes are even terrible, they still did raise you.
Yeah. No, I completely like agree. And that's something I really like about this game, of how it can easily like weave in like very real world like topical, well, topics that, to be redundant, I guess, but like real world issues that are very much still apparent today, while also weaving in sort of like these ever constant like personal and like realistic, or not realistic, but like personal and relatable issues that anyone, I feel like, at any time could relate to, like trying to the struggle between choosing, your partner or your family, or how do I tackle like the stress of like wanting to branch out and get a different, like that's part of like my thing with Freya, is that Freya, to delve more into Freya, is like she works for a like news company, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, a news
um
publishing company.
yeah, and so she is very much kind of been put into this role of, you are going to do these papers, you're going to write these stories and stuff like that for the news. But she wants to branch out and write her own fiction novel, or and like own stories and stuff like that. That's her big arc of the game, is trying to figure out what she wants to write about and how she's going to write it. And you know the game sort of, and seeing her struggle of like, do I stay in this comfortable area of just getting this steady paycheck for writing these stories while ultimately kind of unhappy, or do I try and risk it? Do I branch out and attempt to write my own story with that I want to tell, but potentially not have that steady paycheck?
Yeah, of course. Again, I feel like in this game there's gonna be a character, maybe not all the characters, but there's gonna be a character that you can relate to in some ways because obviously a visual novel you want the writing to be strong, and the writing is strong here. It's the main appeal. Because I will say, going into the one gameplay mechanic, specifically the coffee, I'd say I'd like it. It's a pretty straightforward mechanic. You can mix some ingredients. You have a bunch of different coffees you can serve.
Yeah, it gives the game some interactivity and
Yeah,
stuff
because
like
you
that.
will have some different endings depending on like what coffees you serve to people. Because a lot of times they do basically tell you through the writing is like, yeah, you need to read between the lines sometimes, or maybe not give them what they want, but what they need, and that very much will alter the course of a lot of characters' endings.
hmm Um, but no, yeah, I think like personally, I really like the coffee mechanic because it allows for, you know, it's like I don't want to be mean, but it's like key jingling almost, where it's like it gives you something to do while you're listening to these conversations and stuff like that. But it's
No, I
obviously a
agree
lot.
because a very similar game to this, like Valhalla, which is also a visual novel where you serve drinks to people, but this time it's alcohol because you're just a regular bartender, not a barista. The
Mhm.
developers kind of had a similar thing where like yeah, a lot of times the visual novel, obviously the text is the focus, but every now and then it's nice to break it up with just the little extra mechanic in there, with like the drinks and Valhalla, or just the coffee and coffee talk.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And speaking of, I'm very excited because I know you added Valhalla to our Steam family, so I'm very
Yes,
excited
the
to play that
ever-growing
soon.
Steam family library.
True.
I think it's at like
Um,
700 games now.
yeah, and for context, for the viewers, the reason is because we added a friend of ours who very much has the mindset of my body is a machine that turns Steam games on sale into unplayed games. So,
Yeah, I think they had like 350 or 400 games because before we added them, we had over 300 or like close to 400 games, which is still a pretty respectable amount. But yeah, no, it was insane once we added them.
yeah, yeah, like just such an upgrade.
I love the
Um,
Steam library.
yeah, but I guess before we start wrapping up, we should probably talk about Gala because Gala is also a very important character.
Yeah. I'd say Gala as well. I do have some critiques with the coffee system, but Gala is one of the characters that is also very important that you're trying to get the orders right or like test out different blends to help them. Because Gala mixes that with also some commentary as well, because he is part werewolf, and they have something that happens to them called Fury, where like once full moon comes out, they turn into a werewolf, and it's hard for them to control themselves. But there are a lot of issues with that because they have remedies and sedatives to try and help them keep it down or to make sure they don't go wild, and also like literal isolation rooms that keeps them away from hurting anybody. But Gala is a doctor as well, so he has to help a lot of these patients, and a lot of times he has to figure it out for himself as well because what the government is giving them is not always actually safe or doesn't actually work effectively. So his his particular remedy, he asks you to like help him come up with a blend that helps him ease his mind.
Yeah, and I really like Gala as a character because Gala is very much like a character that I can also relate to. Of he tries and helps everyone around him, but especially like during like some parts of the story, you can see that he is doing it to a degree where it is like kind of hurting himself, and stuff like that. And
Yeah, yeah.
I just find that like really like something I can relate to because there have been times in my life where I've kind of done the same thing where I've tried to help people and try to um, be there for certain people when it's ultimately like you know, they aren't doing the same for me, or they are sort of taking
It's
advantage
basically
of
an
me and
uphill
stuff like
battle.
that. Yeah, and I think Gala, it's just such a well-written character to show that off, because not only does he have to deal with, you know, the stress of working at a hospital and all the crazy stuff that happens there, um, but he also has to deal with the fact that he is part werewolf and he does have like literal things he cannot control about himself that could hurt others if he doesn't put it in check.
Yeah, of course. Also, this is going to be a very terrible mood swing, but I swear, when you said he's very relatable, or I relate to him a lot, I thought you were about to say something is like, because I'm also a werewolf, and this is the beast inside of me.
The beast inside of me. I can't remember the rest of the words after that, but that's pretty funny. Because I had a feeling you were gonna say something like that, and as soon as you finish your sentence, all that pictured in my mind is that one image of like the werewolf like ripping its shirt off. That one
No,
image.
literally that image.
Yeah, that's immediately what sprang to mind.
Oh,
That's pretty
I
funny.
love Coffee Talk.
Oh, yeah, like
I'm so
literally just
excited
like,
for Coffee Talk Tokyo,
"Let's
which may or may not be the
go!"
reason we're doing this video right now.
No way.
Whoa.
But yeah, no. I think it's yeah, no. I just really like Gala. They're just chill dude, and I really like that about Gala.
No, I really do.
I like all the
that, and again,
characters.
it's one of the few instances where I feel like the gameplay mechanic does mix well with the person you're trying to help. Because
Mhm.
one of the few criticisms I do have for this game, which may get remedied in Tokyo and I think a little bit in the sequel, is the fact that like with the drinks, it's kind of just either you have the right one or the wrong one, but also a lot of times you don't really have too much to go on. Like sometimes the order is literally just what they tell you. Other times though, they'll ask for something specific and you have no idea what the recipe is, so you have to keep trying it out. But you have a limited number of times you can trash a coffee, which I mean, you can reload a save, but I don't really want to always do that. So I don't know. That's like one of the
Mhm.
few points I feel like the mechanic could have been improved a little bit. Because I'm gonna mention Valhalla again because very
Yeah.
similar game. And that game, you also have to read into what people want. Like sometimes they'll ask for like a specific drink, but then you have to give them another because it's what they actually wanted, or they're a regular, so you know what will perk them up. But in that game, it does it a little differently because they give you descriptions and like the recipes for all the drinks minus like one secret recipe. And you have the description of the drink and also the ingredients, which you'll use that information to give them what they want. Instead of in Coffee Talk, where a lot of times I feel like it's a little too much of a guessing game, minus like if they say specific ingredients.
Yeah, that is one thing that I like sort of didn't like too. Is just like, you know, I don't want to guess for this. I mean, like obviously, like I want it to be not like complete guesswork. I want there to be hints and stuff like that. And if I can't pick up on those hints, that's on me. But you know,
Yeah,
that's
but again,
something
that's
I
one of the
do
few
agree
minor
with you on.
points. Yeah, it's not a big thing because the game is still a fantastic experience. Even like it is very short, but in that short period of time, you will experience some fantastic writing. But for the gameplay element, I feel like that's just one of the few areas that could have been improved for me. In all honesty,
Yeah, same here.
especially because I have played a game that is comically similar in some ways.
Yeah, but instead of coffee, it's alcohol.
I like alcohol. Okay,
Why did you sound like Alan?
that's the point, Connor. I am Alex.
That's- And I'm
I-
the landlord.
No, I hate the landlord.
I was just wondering if you wanted to fill our Betties with diet soda and smoke weed and play Burnout Revenge for the PS2.
I only drink coffee, Mr. Landlord.
God, I'm gonna miss that show, bro. I'm so sad they canceled it, bro.
Yeah, at least we got those extra episodes, especially the one that Mr. Landlord appeared in again.
It's such a great fucking episode. I love it,
Yeah,
man.
but you know what? Smiling Friends had to send themselves off, I feel like this is a good point for us to send ourselves off with some concluding points about Coffee Talk.
Yeah, I'll go first.
Okay.
I really like Coffee Talk. I think it's just a very charming visual novel. I really like all the characters in it. My favorites probably being Freyla, Gala, and Hyde. I think they're very interesting characters to think about and talk about. I really like while I do have my problems with the game, like core gameplay of the coffee making, I do still think it's a really fun mechanic. And I just really like the world and the writing that the game has. I think it's just very special, and I really like how it touches on a lot of like very important political issues, which we didn't really get into because we don't discuss politics on this channel unless like it's unavoidable.
And also we don't want to spoil too much of the game,
That's also true. But yeah, no, I really like the game. And I think that's all for me.
Yeah. No, I think I'm going to keep mine short as well because, again, this is a short game and subsequently short video. But Coffee Talk is just a great little experience. If you're looking for a nice little short game to play with some very well-written characters and some interesting world building, I'd say Coffee Talk should be right up your alley. It's usually on sale for pretty cheap. It has a sequel and now another sequel coming out very soon. And a lot of fantastic characters. The coffee mechanic, while flawed as we mentioned a little bit, it is still very nice and enjoyable. And you'll just enjoy the conversations you're having with these people. The talk, the conversation. And the last bit for me is I also just I love that with the writing, they're not really afraid to touch on some of those more controversial issues. Because in some instances, or like every now and then they'll mention something, it feels like, okay, I feel like that is a bit direct. Like one of the characters, like I said, indie game developer, and they start talking about indie game development, and I'm like, I'll give you a pass because this is fine enough. But a lot of times they are also.
I was gonna say it is something. I was gonna say, I think it's something that I'm fine with because, like, yeah, dude, indie game development's pretty hard, pretty tough, and not a lot of people realize that.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna say. Is like, even if a couple of the times when they bring up some stuff and it is a little on the nose, I never mention it too much, or I never mind too much because, a lot of times I feel like you need to be direct with the writing sometime for people to get it. But that and also if you're really passionate about these fields, or also again some of these larger real world issues, you shouldn't be afraid to discuss them in that way.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But yeah, last thing I'm going to say as well is, unfortunately, Mohammed Fahmy, one of the co-creators and writers of the game, they did pass away in 2022, so I just want to put it out there. Rest in peace. Thank you for helping make such a great game.
Yeah, rest in peace, king or queen or monarch.
However they identify, because I'm pretty sure I can confidently say this game is also accepting in that way.
Yeah, no, great video game. I didn't know that, so that actually makes me very sad. But I hope whoever they are, or I just hope they know that they made a fantastic video game.
Yeah. But with that, if you guys have enjoyed this nice, chill little episode of the Fetch Quest podcast, please leave a like and maybe subscribe if you aren't already. And comment on your thoughts if you enjoyed this video, if there's anything we can work on, or if you've played Coffee Talk and you want to talk about maybe one of your favorite characters in the game. But with that, I'm your host, Brewer, been joined by my fellow co-host, Connor, and this has been Fetch Quest. Thank you.
Goodbye.